weekly webinar. Thank you everyone for coming here and also asking questions later on. So today we have two guest speakers, Coen and Kevin. Okay, so today we'll start with Coen. Okay, that's Coen Zhang over there. And then the second one will be Kevin. Okay, after the two presentation, we will have a short conversation, a kind of discussion among Coen and Kevin and me. I have 2 or 3 questions for them, depends on the time. And after that conversation, so you will, I encourage everyone to ask your questions. So you just type in your questions in the message window or chat window, and then we will go through them one by one. You can ask, okay, this particular question is for Coen only, or this particular question is for Kevin only. That's all fine. Or it's just a general question for anyone to answer. That's all fine. So I encourage everybody to just say it out loud if you have any questions, okay? Okay, before we get started, just a very brief introduction to Upswing Academy for those who join us for the first time. So Upswing Academy is after-school learning center based in Oakville, Ontario. We offer a variety of programs, including English reading, writing, university application, vocabulary, and also university bridging programs as well. So if you are interested in developing your skills, no matter it's language skills, reading skills, thinking skills, we always have something for you. So if you're interested, you can scan the QR code in that picture and join us through the WeChat, or you can visit our website at upswingacademy.ca. Okay, you can leave your message there as well, or you can just browse through our past events, because there's actually a collection of all the past events. There's a video there. If you would like, you can always review them. Okay, so that's a little bit about Upswing Academy. Now let's go back to the event for today. So today we will start with Coen, okay? So let me just briefly introduce Coen to everybody. So Coen is actually from Newmarket, right? That's the place. Yeah, and he's actually accepted to University of Waterloo. He will start learning, but that's a difficult word. That's what? Mechatronic engineering. I actually have no idea what that's about. So maybe later on you can tell me about it. My major is English, so that's why I have no clue about all the science subjects. Okay, and actually Coen maintains a 96 average while in high school, and actually at the same time he also participated in many social activities, leading multiple clubs. He also joined DACA, so I believe a lot of high school students would know, and won the medal, and a provincial medal, I believe. Yeah, and also he joined SHAD, S-H-A-D, and also have a competition of startup competition, right? And he also get the fund or the award funding from Western University. So that's a great achievement. Okay, so now without further ado, let me give the mic to Coen. Okay, so Coen, you can share your screen and we can get started.
Okay. So can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, Ming, for the introduction. So yeah, I'm going into University of Waterloo next year, or like this coming fall, and I'm going to go into mechatronics engineering. So I wasn't planning to explain what mechatronics engineering was, but it's like a really like kind of like program that nobody really knows about. So basically, it's like 50% mechanical engineering, 30% electrical engineering, and then 20% software engineering. So it's like kind of like a mix of all those engineerings. And I chose this just because I wanted like sort of like a broad curriculum instead of something very specific. And yeah, I just graduated from high school this year. Wait, oh, okay. So in today's slideshow, I'll be talking about 3 main things. So first, my university applications and my choices and my reasons for choosing what I chose. Secondly, I'll be talking about my high school marks, my AIF, which is additional information form for Waterloo, and what I had on my extracurriculars. And finally, I'll go over some video interview tips since I did video interviews for everyone except Western. So this was like the comparison chart I made when I was trying to decide between the 4 schools that I applied to. So the first one on the far right was Western, and that was my safety school. So the first thing that you have to consider when you're applying to engineering is if it's general, like as in first year, you don't have to pick a specific engineering, or if it's specific. So if you have to go into a specific one. So for Western, it was general first year, and the only requirements they had were marks, and they had an optional supplementary form, but I didn't do it, and I still got in very early in December. And the second option was McMaster University, which also offered a general first year, but they offered free choice with a 95 plus average, which means in your second year, usually to go from first year to second year, you have to get like a high mark and basically fight for the engineering program that you want to go to. But if you have a 95 plus average, then you could have free choice. So you could choose whatever you want, whichever engineering discipline you want, with the exception of like the most competitive ones, which for some reason I think was like chemical engineering, but I don't remember at this point. And the requirements were also your marks, your supplementary form, and your interview. And I got in around February. My second choice was Waterloo. And for Waterloo engineering, there are 2 ways you could go. You could go general first year, which is called track 1, or you could choose your specific program if you wanted to. So I decided to choose computer engineering. And the requirements were the same as McMaster, your marks, your supplementary form, and your interview. And I got in around March. And finally, my top choice was University of Waterloo because they offered a specific first year for mechatronics, which the University of Toronto doesn't actually offer a mechatronics program. Whereas McMaster and Western do, but they're general first year, right? And the requirements were their marks, the supplementary form, and the interview, and I got in around April. So why did I decide to choose the University of Waterloo? 4 main reasons. First of all, it's established co-op system. Secondly, it's US working opportunities. Third, it's prestige. And finally, it's innovative culture. So firstly, it's co-op. I think this is the main driving factor for why someone would want to go to Waterloo, because it has the biggest co-op in the world with over 28,000 students. And the thing is, like other schools do have co-op, but Waterloo, since they have the biggest co-op and they've done it for the longest time, they have the most connections with the industry, and they've also developed trust like with the companies. So companies actually like hiring from Waterloo just because they know that they'll at least get a certain like level of students because they've been accepted into the University of Waterloo, right? And then the second thing I was considering was the difference between co-op and PEY, which is the University of Toronto's type of co-op, which is instead of like 4 months, which is how long a co-op usually is, and 6 of those, what the University of Toronto offers is like 1 job for 1 year to 16 months. So I decided to choose co-op just because it was a longer duration in total, and I get to experience different companies as well. And you might be wondering, why does co-op matter so much if I could just find my own job during the summer, right? Well, actually co-op, for co-op, employers can claim a 25% back in tax credit for hiring co-op students. So basically it's cheaper for them to hire co-op students because the government allows them to do that. So that's why employers would rather hire from co-op students, and it's much easier to find a job if you're in co-op, because not only can you use Waterloo's system to find co-op, you could also, like employers will have it cheaper to hire co-op students, so they'll want to hire you. So yeah, continuing on for co-op, this was a statistic I found about the software engineering class of 2020 and their co-op locations. So as you could see on the very left, it starts off like most of their co-op locations start off in Toronto or Waterloo. And then as you could see, as they progress through their work terms, so their 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then 6th, almost all of them move to the US. So mainly California, New York, and Seattle. And I found this really interesting just because I want to get the chance to work in the US as well. And I found this statistic that said 91.4% of respondents reported working in the US for at least one term. And this is continuing on the same note. This is where they will be working after they graduate. So majority of them will be working in California, followed by the Northwest. So that's Seattle, and then followed by the East Coast, which is New York. And then you got Toronto as well. Okay, so now that I explained the co-op system and how I think it's really good, I'll explain how I got into Waterloo. So it's three main things: your marks, your extracurriculars, and your interview, and I'll go over all of them. So this is how Waterloo calculates the admission average. So first they take your mark, which is out of 100. Then they add your AIF, or your supplementary form, which is at most 5 marks. And then they add your interview, which is at most 3 marks. And then they make a total out of it. So for your AIF and interview, they don't tell you what score you get. I'm just guessing. And some other things to note is that for your AIF, usually the scores 4 out of 5 and 5 out of 5 are only reserved for national level like achievements or international level. So that's why most people can guess that they get around a 2 or 3, or if they know they got higher, then they'll know. So the first part, which is the most important part, is marks, right? So on the left side, I listed all my marks. So as you can see, advanced functions, calculus, chemistry, physics, and English, and economics. So for engineering, it was like the top 5, and then economics was the one free course that was my 6th course. And on the graph on the right side shows the acceptance rate or the probability to get an offer from Waterloo depending on your mark. Yeah, so I'll explain it. So let's take, for example, mechatronics, which is the gray line. And let's say I had a 96, that translates to an 80% to get an offer. And as you can see, all the engineerings aren't the same. Like some are way more competitive than others. So this was my high school study strategy and how I achieved a 96. So basically, I divided each subject into its own thing. So every subject I studied in a different way. So for math and physics, I would do every question in the textbook until I memorized every scenario. For chemistry, I would take notes of the PowerPoint slides outside of class. And then during class, I would take notes of everything the teacher said. And in English, I would talk about the readings with my friends and do additional research online. In economics, I would review notes a day before the exam. So yeah, every subject, try to approach differently and you'll find more success. So this was how I distributed my studying. So on the left, you'll see a normal person's study schedule, which may look like 5 hours for a weekday and then 3 hours for a weekend. But my study schedule was like 2 hours for a weekday and then 8 hours for a weekend. And the reason why is because I treated like studying in the weekend as if I was at school. So I studied for 8 hours a day, and that freed up a lot of time during the weekdays so I could relax and participate in my extracurriculars and do my job as well. So I think using the weekend is a great thing to do if you want to utilize all your time. And the reason why I suggest this is because it keeps you consistent. You see, if you rest for 2 days on the weekend, it's like hard to establish a rhythm and get back to studying. So that's why I recommend studying every day and like pretending as if there was school on Saturday and Sunday, but just studying at your own pace, right? And another example I have for maintaining consistency is fitness and working out. So for example, if you do that every single day or any activity, right? If you do any activity every single day, then that consistency is going to translate over into your studying. So for example, I went to the gym like 7 days a week for an hour. And then I was able to, like, even before big tests or big like unit tests, quizzes, whatever, right? I would still go to the gym because I knew that I distributed my studying like equally across every single day, and that I was going to be fine, right? So maintain consistency and you'll find better success. Okay, so moving on, part 2, my AIF and my extracurriculars. So just to give you some context, this is exactly what I put on my Waterloo AIF. And this is the order I put it in too, because you can list it in order of importance. So firstly, I was the president of the videography club. Then I said I won a DECA provincial award, and I was a finance executive on the team. I also had a part-time job as a math tutor. And I also participated in SHAD, and I had the winning team project. And then after that, after your main achievements, you want to list every single thing you can. So I listed all my clubs, like Rubik's Cube Club, Math Club, Engineering Club, and they also have a section for projects if you did any. So I built a 3D printer, built a mini greenhouse. And then you also want to comment on anything else that you spent your time on, because it could be interesting. So I said, played a lot of sports. So I said visual art, badminton, basketball. And yeah, these pictures were of when I was participating in DECA and in SHAD. Oh, and this is some volunteering work I did. So basically I just made these posters. You've probably seen like something like this, or maybe you've seen them. But yeah, I just started doing this recently. The next part is how you would prepare your extracurriculars. So I think the most important thing you want to do is emphasize your leadership roles and your executive roles. So the thing is, like, if you have a hard time trying to get into a leadership role, what I suggest you do is try to start a club, which is actually really easy, because all you have to do usually in your school is just sign a form about what your club is about and everything. And then all you have to do is tell your friends about it. And then suddenly you have like 15 people under you and you're running this club. So I suggest you try to do something like that. Just find something you're interested in and start a club in it. And the hardest thing about having a club is just maintaining it. Like, trying to find interesting things for you to do, like every single meeting. That's the hardest part of maintaining a club. The other thing you could do, especially with the whole pandemic situation, is try to find some sort of online student group and apply your skills there. Because like there are a bunch of like startup or nonprofit groups that need help marketing with graphic design or content creation. So that's a great thing to put on your resume as well, because it shows initiative. So my other tips for you are to be genuine and write about something you're passionate about. Because if you're, say, applying to computer science, and you pretend that you really like coding, but in reality you're maybe interested in something else, like the admission officers will see that, and it won't look good, because like not only are a lot of other applicants talking about the same thing you're talking, it doesn't sound genuine at all, right? So like if you're interested in sports, just talk about that. Because Waterloo wants really great kids, but they don't know what type of great kids they want. They just want great people. So anything you're good at or anything you're passionate about, just make sure you talk about. The next tip is to focus on making an impact in a team that can be explained. So ideally you have 1 or 2 things that you're really involved in, as opposed to like say 10 things, right? And you want to make sure that you can explain exactly what you did in those roles, so that it looks like you contributed more, right? My final tip is, if a question says it's optional, it isn't optional. You have to use the question to sell yourself further. So for example, what I mean by this is, in the Waterloo AIF, there was the last question that said optional, like anything else you want to tell us about yourself. Then I used that chance to talk about something that they didn't ask and show how I was passionate in that subject. So make sure you use all your space to talk about yourself, basically. The other thing is, like, if you saw my extracurriculars and you're like, oh, I don't have enough time to do every single thing, right? Well, here's the thing. It's not about what you do, it's about what you don't do. So this is what I did at the start of grade 12. I made a chart like this, like how it's shown here. So I just put activities on one side, and I put the time on the other side. And I listed every single activity that I was doing that I thought was wasting my time. So I said video games, social media, watching random YouTube videos, probably a bunch more. And then I totaled the time. Turns out to be 5 hours a day saved, and that's actually 35 hours a week. So if you step back, that's actually like a full-time job. You're right? Like you could save that much time and invest it into something more important, right? Okay, so video interview tips. This is how Waterloo's was. So there's two questions, 60 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to answer. So the first question is just about yourself. So mine was, what do you see yourself doing with a Waterloo degree in 5 years? And I just said something like how I would use the degree to find a job in the industry and try to further that industry and try to be on the cutting edge of technology, something like that. And the second question was a problem solving question. And this is it's to test your ability to speak and your ability to enunciate what you're thinking inside of your head. So for example, one of the questions might be, the city where you live in is hosting the Olympics next year. How would you allocate the budgets for the Olympics? So just something to get you thinking, right? It's sort of like the question where it's like, how many balls can fit inside the Empire State Building? They just want to see how you think and how you can communicate your thoughts. And I'm going to end off my presentation with some very commonly asked questions about Waterloo specifically. So first, do grade 11 marks matter? And the answer is no, except for early admissions. And the thing is, even if your grade 11 marks are bad, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they're only going to look at your grade 12 marks, and then they're going to accept you based on that. So if you have good grade 11 marks, then that's great. You'll probably get accepted early, but if not, then don't worry about it. Second question is taking summer school for a top 6 grade 12 course a bad idea? And for Waterloo, the answer is yes, it's a bad idea, because Waterloo will deduct points for people who take summer school if the course is in your top 6 grade 12. However, summer school is not bad though, because I took summer school and it was actually a good experience. So feel free to take summer school for any course that is not in grade 12 or not your top 6. The last question I have is, will Waterloo punish me for taking a spare? And my answer to that is no, because I got in fine with 2 spares. So what I was doing was I was taking a course off each semester. So instead of 4 courses a semester, I only had 3 courses a semester, which was really good for me since I could focus down on getting really high grades, right? So Waterloo doesn't care if you take spares. However, they will give a small bonus to students with a full course load. Yeah, and thanks for listening. This is my contact information if you want to ask further questions. And right now I am in stream 4 of Waterloo Engineering, which means I'll be finding a winter co-op. I'll be finding a co-op this winter. So that's what I'm looking for. As of right now, that's what I'm doing. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you, Kevin. Oh my God, you already started to look for the co-op?
Yeah.
School haven't even started. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay.
No problem.
I really like the way you have been putting a lot of thoughts in time management. I think that's one of the key things many of our previous guests mentioned about. But I think you're giving a very good example, how you're looking at on the weekday 2 hours, but weekends, so you're looking at what, 7 or 8 hours each weekend. So basically you are really make sure that you are learning as you are in the school every single day. Yeah. Right. I think that's a very good example of time management. And also when you think reflection about how much time people probably wasted, 2 hours on games and 2 hours on YouTube and 1 hour on YouTube and social media, right? So that's each week add up to a total of 35 hours. Yeah, I think that's very good strategy. I mean, good ideas for everybody. Maybe I will still keep 30 minutes for game just to relax a little bit, but totally I agree with that. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. I mean, that's a very good example for time management, looking at how you can maximizing the time you have, because each of us is equal, right? We always have the same 24 hours a day. It's how much you put into learning and study. Thank you for that. Okay. So now, yeah, I can see some questions coming up. So we'll answer all those questions and after Kevin's presentation. But yes, you are encouraged to post your questions early so that it stays on top. Okay. Okay. So now let's move on to Kevin. So Kevin, you may share your screen. Okay. So just some brief introduction about Kevin. Kevin is actually from Oakville, right? So yeah, that's where I live. So He's actually from White Oaks Secondary School, and he has actually in the IB program. I'm sure our audience may have a lot of questions about IB, when to take IB, how to choose IB, where US school take IB. So all kind of questions. Maybe Kevin can help us a little bit on that, as much as you know. And in this fall, he's going to University of Western Ontario, Western, studying for medicine. Okay, and he in high school he has an average of 96.8 and an IB score of 37. He also involved in many of the clubs and social activities, extracurricular activities. Okay, so now let me give the mic to Kevin. So it's yours.
All right, thank you. So like Ming said, this fall I'm going to Western University to study medical sciences, which is basically the pre-med route for Western. Yeah, so just a quick outline of what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to briefly talk about what I did in high school. So my marks, my extracurriculars, how I applied to universities, and then how I chose the university I'm going to, and finally just some tips and tricks of that you can apply when you're in this application process. So about me, so I actually moved to Ontario in grade 9 from Montreal. And so that's one of the reasons why when I attended White Oak Secondary, I actually went to the French immersion program. And later in grade 11, I actually entered the IB program. And just a quick fun fact about me is that I really like playing sports, and you'll see how I'm kind of able to balance some of the sports that I play throughout the year, just to keep some hobbies going along with my studying. So in high school, so like I said before, I attended White Oak Secondary School, and I did the IB diploma. And so just some quick extracurriculars of what I did in grade 12, and a bit of them were in grade 11 as well. So I was actually on the senior basketball team, and I was a captain on it. As well, I was part of the Air Cadets program for like over 6 years. So you'll see how that plays a role into my application. I was also on the DECA team. I was on the badminton team. I was an executive in MedLife, which is kind of this like medical, like abroad kind of this like organization. And I was also an executive on the Mass Society. And finally, I volunteered at a senior care home. So these are kind of some of the extracurriculars I had in grade 12 as well as in grade 11. So I'm just going to talk about my approach in high school first, and then what I kind of prioritized going through high school. And so obviously the main key that you have to keep in mind when especially applying to university is that grades are going to be your most important factor, right? University, regardless of which school or which program, it's obviously your grade is going to be the main priority. So you want to make sure that you have good grades if you want to get into very competitive programs. And then also, they also look at extracurriculars and clubs, but you want to make sure that you have a healthy balance between getting good grades and doing well in extracurriculars or having a nice commitment in those like activities, right? You don't want to be playing sports every day or going to clubs every day, but then having really bad grades, because that's not going to carry your application. So just an advice I give for all the students for extracurriculars is that I tell you guys to commit to the ones that you guys actually enjoy. And so even though it might not be tailored to the program that you're applying to, for example, if you're applying to, in my case, if I'm applying to medicine and I had like a sports commitment, or even I like to draw, let's say, right? I would tell you to commit to it, because when you're applying to university, schools actually like to see that you have some sort of a commitment, regardless of whether that's applicable to the program or not. So yeah, so they want to see commitment, leadership, and involvement. And I'll talk a bit about how I was able to like kind of hit all of these points in my application. But you really want to focus on these when you're looking at how you want to, or like kind of which clubs you want to choose. Also, one thing that I told myself when I was going through my grade 12 year was to remind myself of what my goal was. So kind of set some goals for myself. One goal that I set was that, well, I wanted to get into a good program at a good university, right? That's a pretty general like goal. But to do that, I had to obviously get good grades. And I kind of thought about, well, how do I get good grades, right? Maybe I need to cut down on some on some like video games, right, or stuff like that. And so what I actually decided to do is that I told myself in grade 12 I'm not going to touch video games at all. So I didn't do that, right? And I'm going to have some healthy kind of like pastimes, such as playing basketball or just going outside, right? These were just healthier stuff for me to do rather than sit inside and play video games. And then finally, I would just tell you guys to enjoy high school, right? It's you'll only have these 4 years to enjoy it, and so you might as well enjoy it. But remember that you do have some goals that you have to reach at the end. So now I'm going to talk about IB at WAS or at White Oaks and how it kind of works. So it's a 2-year program, grade 11 and grade 12. And basically throughout these 2 years, you have to pick 6 courses, which are basically studying throughout these 2 years, which are split up depending on what kind of course they are. So there's 2 types of courses. There's HL courses, which is higher level, and there's standard level, which is SL courses. And typically both of these courses are a bit above the Ontario curriculum in terms of difficulty and standard. And if you guys know about like AP tests and AP courses, AP kind of lays between HL and SL, I would say. So the IB courses I took was HL English, HL French, HL Chemistry, HL Math, SL Physics, and SL Business and Management. And you can see all the grades that I got. So I got mainly 6s and 5s. So I got 2 5s. So what actually happened this year with IB is that they canceled the final exam. So normally your final grade is supposed to be dependent on how well you do in that final exam. But since this year was canceled, it was based on this other assessment. So just keep kind of that note about these IB grades. And then for theory of knowledge, TOK, theory of knowledge, it's basically like this philosophy course that we also had to take. I got an A in that. And for EE, which is this extended essay, which is like a 4,000 word essay that you have to write for the IB, I got a B on that, which was a 3 points. And in total, I got 37 out of 45. And just for yourself to know, like the worldwide average this year was a bit lower than typically previous years. So yeah. So when applying to university, these were some of the marks. So these were the marks that I applied to university with. So when applying to a pre-med major such as Western Med Sci or Mac Health Sci or Queen's Health Sci, all of these pre-med majors, they all require 4 mandatory courses. So they require grade 12 English, grade 12 biology, grade 12, 1 grade 12 math, and grade 12 chemistry. And then they give you 2 spare classes to put whatever highest mark you have and as those marks. So I got 96. I actually took biology in the summer. In my opinion, for pre-med, I know Waterloo deducts some points for summer courses, but for other schools, they don't really care about summer school like courses. And then for calc, I got 98, chemistry, I got 95, data, I got 98, and French, I got 96. And then, yeah, so these are you have to keep in mind that these are my highest marks in high school, right, in grade 12. So obviously I do have some lower marks, but it's okay to have some lower marks if as long as you have like a really strong top 6, because applying to university, they only care about your 6 highest marks, as well as the requirements, like the required courses. Okay, now applying to university, I only applied to Canadian universities. I applied to 6 Canadian universities: Western, McGill, Waterloo, Ottawa, Queen's, and McMaster. And these were the programs that I got into. So I got into Western Med Sci, which is the program I'm going to, McGill, Anatomy and Cell Biology, Waterloo Biomed Sci, Ottawa Health Sci, Queen's Health Sci. And then I got rejected from Mac Health Sci and then Waterloo CAP, which is this advanced pharmacy program. So the numbers that you see on the right are actually the entrance scholarships that they give you. So what you'll notice is that even though they might seem like a lot, it's actually just purely based on your average. So if you have a 95 plus average, applying to these schools, they will always give you an entrance scholarship because you have that average, right? So they do that to everyone. And so if that's something that you guys are looking into, then Just know that it's purely based on your average, and you can find where you fall within those boundaries on their websites. So I actually didn't apply to any US schools because one, I found that they were, well, first of all, they were very expensive, but also because I feel like Canadian universities are really good, especially for pre-med. So there wasn't exactly a need that, or like I didn't feel like the US schools gave me a particular advantage over these Canadian schools. Yeah. So yeah, so just to keep in mind for you guys, when you guys are applying, it's $50 per program. And I would actually recommend to apply to at least 5 programs. So the method that I used to apply to like to decide which schools I wanted to apply to was this kind of like reach, target, safety, this kind of method. I know Coen talked a bit about it, but basically what it means is like you want to have some reach schools, which is basically schools that are really hard to get in, or programs that are really hard to get in, and that you might have, like, even though you're competitive for the program, it's still going to be very difficult for you. So for me, that was McMaster Health Science. It's also Waterloo CAP. And just know that like I actually didn't get into those, right? So those are generally programs that are like very, very difficult, right? And then target schools are generally programs that you're pretty confident, but it's still really competitive programs. So for me, that was Western, McGill, and Queens. And safety schools are schools basically that you are for sure to get in, right? These are basically backup schools that if you don't get into any other school, you know that you can get into them. So you want to apply to at least maybe 1 or 2, just to be sure that you have somewhere to go after high school. So for me, that was Ottawa and Waterloo. And so for a lot of these programs that I applied to, they were all purely based on marks. So if I actually go back here and show you guys, all the schools that I got in were actually all purely based on marks. McMaster is actually, the moment you have a 90% average or higher, it's all based on the supplementary application that 4th years are grading. So it's very subjective. And then for Waterloo CAP, it's also really based on supplementary application. It's like, if you have a 95 average, I think, then you're considered like competitive. But then your supplementary application includes stuff like, have you done any internships at a pharmaceutical company or in a pharmacy, stuff like that. Yeah. And then also for applying, how I like knew which programs to apply with is basically all the schools I applied to had some sort of a med school, right? So my ultimate goal is to, after my undergrad, is to go into med school. And so all of the programs that, or all of the schools that actually have a med school typically have a very competitive pre-med programs as well. And so I kind of look towards the step after undergrad and what I would do after I studied this like undergrad. So you kind of have to take a step back and look ahead of what you can do after with this program. And so that's kind of the approach I took. And finally, I would just recommend to do a lot of research, like just spend a lot of time on the internet, right? Researching the like the official websites, as well as Reddit is something that can be very good, but also it can be off sometimes, right? But Reddit is basically like this platform that a lot of students will use, and sometimes even professors will like share their comments on it. So you can use that to definitely like share your opinion with other people. Okay, now for supplementary application, for pre-med programs, it's for the ones that I mentioned before that were purely based on marks, they all had a supplementary application, but this is only for, like, they'll only consider your supplementary application if, for example, you had the same average as someone else. And then if they had to choose between either you or that person, and you guys, let's say both had 90%, right? They would read your supplementary application and see, okay, this person had more volunteering like opportunities, had more volunteering hours, whereas this person had maybe like 1 or 2 clubs at most, right? So they would base it on that only when it gets to that point. But for a lot of schools, it's purely based on marks, so you have to keep that in mind. The only ones that I know that for sure that supplementary application weighed very heavily was McMaster. So they, every year what they actually do is they give out like these 3 very like random questions or very challenging questions. So for example, for this year, the ones that I had to write were, I think the first question was this picture of like a bird, right? A bird and like kind of the small animal or whatever you would make of it. And it would just, the question would just be, how do you feel about this picture, or how do you feel about this painting, right? And you would have to write 150 words about it. And so basically what they do is then is that they make fourth years read it, and they kind of give a mark on it out of 7. Like, how do they like it? If they like it a lot, then it's like a 5 or 6. And then if they're like, it's okay, it's mediocre, then they'll give you like a 3 or 4, right? So that's kind of how they did it for McMaster. So a lot of typical questions, especially for like, these are mainly like general like sub-apps. They'll be like, why do you want to come to this school? Or why do you want to study this program at this school, right? So for that, I would just suggest doing a lot of research, learning about the culture of the school, because different schools have different approaches to how they want to like teach their students, obviously. So for example, Waterloo obviously is very well known for their co-op programs, right? And so that's probably one approach that that they consider very heavily. Whereas let's say Western, they are very like, they're a lot more like academic focused. So they'll probably want to focus more on like studying and like having big classes and stuff like that. So it depends a lot on what kind of culture the school has. Also, other typical questions, just like list your extracurriculars and your work experience. So just, they give you like a few slots to write about what you did and what you did in those clubs and whatever. And then they'll give you a list of that you can write like your awards, your achievements, and your scholarships. These are pretty typical questions that they ask. My tip would be to start early. Like, you definitely don't want to leave like 5 or 6 applications in the last week that it's due, right? Because you won't have time to do it, because you really want to, once you're done writing it, you want to peer edit it, right? So you want to ask your friends to read over it. Is there anything wrong with it? Or is there anything I should add, right? Ask for other people's opinion, and that'll be very helpful. Also, you want to keep track of your answers in a document. This is something I did, because what you'll find is that a lot of these questions are repetitive, right? Repetitive among the different school sub-apps. And so that's something that'll come in very handy, because a lot of times you'll realize that you can kind of copy paste the same answer and then kind of change some stuff according to what kind of school it is, right? So that's something I would suggest doing. So this is a very simple kind of resume of what I had, right? So what you can see here is that, like, excluding from the volunteering hours, right? You can notice that how I only have cadets, basketball team, and post-in, which is like the volunteering senior care home. So these 3 are 3 commitments that I've done for like a very long time. So cadets I've done for over 6 years. Basketball is something that I've enjoyed playing for like the last like 10 years or whatever. And post-in is something that I've been very, very like dedicated to in the past like 2 years. So these are very big commitments that I've done throughout high school, but they also have leadership positions, right? So cadets was a very big part of it. It had leadership, it had commitment, but we also did a lot of community involvement related stuff. So you see how if you're very committed to one aspect of, or like one club, you can pull out a lot of stuff from it. So it's kind of the same advice as Coen, right? Try to have 1, 2, or 3 very good, very strong involvements, and then maybe rather than having like 10 or whatever. Finally, choosing university, the reason why I chose Western, or if you guys are trying to decide on which university to go to, I would very much think about the campus, the social life, mainly the program opportunities, I'd say. So why is this program better than another one? Does it give you any extra opportunities, right? So for me, MedSci is something that was, for example, that was a better opportunity than, let's say, Queen's Health Science, because in 3rd and 4th year, I get to specialize in a specialty, right? So I can do cell biology or anatomy and cell biology, or I can do physiology or whatever. And I also get to have my own research. So this was a really big opportunity that Western provides with medical sciences. And so, like, similarly, if you're trying to study something else, like Coen, let's say, right, program opportunities would be co-op, right? That's a very big one, right? So you want to take that into account a lot. Also, school connections, right? this is kind of related to like school prestige a bit. But the school name definitely has something to play with, like where you want to go. Like, I'm not gonna like disagree with that. But you don't want you don't want to go to a school because of the school name. Okay, that's something that you need to differentiate, is that you don't want to go to like a school just because it has a big name. And finally, this is like might be a kind of weird advice, but I would actually suggest somewhere that's not too close to home. So if you're actually living at the school rather than at home, it helps you build a lot of skills that you wouldn't get if you just stayed at home, right? So living by yourself, and later on cooking for yourself, right? Being more independent. These are things that will help you like just later on in life, rather than like staying at home, having your parents cook for you and stuff like that. Yeah, so for me, choosing university, choosing Western, big part of it was campus, as well as the culture of Western that played a very big impact on me, and as well as the program opportunities. Finally, for some tips and tricks, just overall, I'd suggest just start early, like not only for supplementary application, but applying to schools, right? Like the thing you have to keep in mind is that you can apply to schools, like let's say you apply to like 3 or 4 schools the moment it opens. You can apply to more schools after, right? So it's not just one application and it's done. You can apply to more as you go. So don't be afraid to apply early. And also have to keep in mind that the moment you apply, that's when they send out the sub apps. So if you apply last minute, then you won't have that much time to complete the supplementary applications either. Okay, so if you get it done earlier, you'll have more time to review the sub apps and just peer edit them and all that. Look at the requirements. That's a big part. It seems very easy, but I would actually make like a spreadsheet of the schools you want to apply to, the programs you want to apply to, and what the requirements are. So some schools might be very similar, like especially if you're applying the same program, they might have very similar requirements. But for example, like some school might just require like one extra course or something that might be that might throw you off. So you wanna watch out for those small details. Finally, just focus on yourself, right? So when you're in high school, I think it's very easy to start comparing yourself with others, especially with people in the same program as you. So just like focus on your own goals, right? And like just like trust yourself and you'll do well, right? Like if you put time into studying, like everything should work out fine. So don't worry too much about others, and then obviously stay optimistic. So even if you don't get into like your dream school, it's not the end of the world, because like it's probably going to be the same experience as if you went to like still a top school, but like your second choice, let's say, right? So like for me, I didn't get to like Mac Hillside, but that's not the end of the world, because I actually try to pull out like the positives from going to Western, and I actually think that it's an overall better choice for me now, right? So I actually enjoy the fact that I'm going to Western now. So yeah, just stay optimistic, and if you put in the work, everything's gonna work out fine. So yeah. So if you guys have any questions, you guys can email me or just find me on Instagram. And yeah, thank you guys.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Wow, I mean, both of you guys, I mean, Coen and Kevin, you did a lot of research looking, I can see that you're putting that into charts, spreadsheets, doing comparisons, and looking at the process to make everything happen. Oh my God, that well done, I can say that, okay? Okay, so I see that there's quite a lot of questions there already. So I only have one question for all of you to think about. Well, I think others may still have questions coming up. I'm sure you're doing great. I mean, you are probably the top students in your high school, and I'm surely you will be a very successful university students in the next few months, in the next months to come. So I want us to think about in your high school, grade 11, grade 12, anything that you feel that you probably could done better. So is there anything that say, oh, I should have done that. I shouldn't have done that, or something like that. So do you have any such experience you can share with us so we can learn from your regrets? Maybe there's something. I remember one of the students used to tell me, I should have done more outing, hiking, more outdoor activity because that's somehow you can connect with nature. You can also have something to talk about with your university's classmates, students. So yeah, that's something she regretted. What about you guys? Do you have anything, any similar feelings?
You can go first.
Perfect.
I'm trying to think. One thing I can think of is try to make a lot of friends in the upper years, because what they do is that they'll just give you all the tests that they did in their courses. You get the exact same tests. So like, I don't know if you want to consider it cheating or unethical, but like your life will be a lot easier if you become friends with upper years, because not only will they like give you tests, but they'll also teach you and give you advice on like certain teachers, for example, and like also what they regret. Like, so.
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of resources out there that are available to you. Like in the library, I think there's past exams and stuff that are always available in like your school library. So there's a lot of resources that are out there that you can use, and I think that's very helpful. I think one thing that that I guess I should have done more was like just, well, like obviously like I could have studied harder, but I think in the end I don't think it impacted me that much. I think I would have much rather spent more time efficiently, like whether that's spending time with friends or just spending time actually doing stuff. So a lot of times I just found myself like doing nothing, kind of just like, it sounds kind of weird, but you're not spending your time like that efficiently. So that's one thing that I would probably change.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think both of you actually share something in common. Basically, it's interpersonal. I mean, making friends. I mean, reaching out to upper grades, seniors, and also communicate better, connect better with your classmates, and building your network. I mean, that's what some of the soft skills really needed for your future career success, right? Yeah. Okay. So also that's all my questions. I see a long list of questions, so we can go through them together. Okay, let's start with the first one. That's from Katie, right? Okay. What kind of small bonus for the first course load? Oh, is anyone? Yeah, that's the first question.
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and the thing is, like, I actually don't know, because if I did know, I would put it in the presentation. But Waterloo doesn't tell you how much of a small bonus that it is, like, but like it's like well known, like that there is something there. But if I had to guess, like just take this at like with a grain of salt. It's probably like around 1%, so it's not significant, but it's still something to look out for if you want to take a full course load.
Okay. So yeah, at least I hope that helps. So the next one is from Cindy. Okay, that's a question for Coen. Taking summer courses, grade 12, top 6 is a bad idea. What about doing this pandemic situation and what will still deduct your mark under these circumstances?
Yeah, so if you have a really good reason for why you took summer school, it may, there won't be a penalty involved, but it has to be a really good reason. Like I remember there was this one reason that my friend said that actually helped him. And he said, oh, I didn't want schools to be canceled because of the strike, so I did summer school English or something. And then he got him fined just with that. As for the pandemic, I guess that would be in the same vein as a strike happening. So yeah, that seems like it could be a good reason. If it is a good reason, then you won't have any penalty.
Okay. So next, I think questions are all related to the math competition. It's from Rebecca and then Katie add on to that. So Waterloo asked for for math competition, Waterloo asked for the previous year's result. Does it mean you can't do it earlier? Do you have any information, any idea about it?
Oh, so I'll just answer both of these math contest questions right now. So for Waterloo, they only care about math contests, like any type of math contest, if you're going into the faculty of math, and that includes computer science, right? But they also care about the Euclid, which is only a grade 12 math contest. But the thing is, it doesn't, like, it's not weighed that much. The only reason why they would take the Euclid into consideration is if you had like the same marks as another student, then, and you were on like the tipping point of trying to get into the university, then they would check your Euclid score. It doesn't matter if you take it like in grade 11 or grade 10 or whenever, because they only care about your best year. So the more times you take it, the better, because you could just, flaunt your highest Euclid score. And personally, I actually didn't take Euclid just because in our year, the Euclid was actually canceled. So yeah.
Okay, so question for Rebecca and Katie. Okay.
Yeah,
next.
sorry. I can actually add something on Euclid. Well, I did it with some friends. I did Euclid, like the actual contest, and we did it in grade 11. So because it was canceled this year, right? It's like a lot of people didn't have a Euclid score. So the thing about doing it in grade 11 is that it might be difficult for you to get a distinction because you're competing with grade 12s. So like if you're like really good at math and you do well in grade 11, then it might look better. But you have to keep in mind that you're competing with grade 12, so it might be difficult for you to get a distinction grade or something like that. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the next one is from Jane. Why did you choose Western instead of McGill?
I said at the beginning of the presentation, like I actually come from Montreal, so I'm pretty familiar with McGill. In terms of the program, I think overall McGill is a very good school. Like overall, like well-rounded, it's a lot better. It's like very good, like in Canada especially. The reason why I chose Western over McGill first is that McGill is a bit far. Like Western is relatively close to Oakville, where compared to McGill, like in Montreal. That's one thing, but also just I enjoyed Western's atmosphere a bit more, and as well as the program of MedSci. So McGill, I applied to anatomy and cell biology. At Western, I did MedSci, and I just think that overall, I looked at the course load first of all, and I found that Western had a lot more, not easier course loads, but course loads that were more interesting to me. So in second year, I got to do like anatomy courses and all of that. Whereas McGill, it kind of like, they were focused a lot on like bio, where compared to like human anatomy, stuff like that. So you guys can take a look at the course load. It's actually posted on like their websites and stuff like that for deciding for university. But overall, I think Western's atmosphere was just more suiting for me.
Okay, so let me ask you, Kevin. You do have like I remember you were talking about the distance, right? So you want to like get out of home and stay with other students and do your first cooking. So you do have like a radius. So you're saying like Western, that's right, 100 radius.
Well, yeah, well, anywhere that like you wouldn't live from home is like good enough. So I could go to like US, right? And that would still kind of be the same. But like, I think Western is in a sweet spot. Like it's not too far, but it's not close either. So I can commute if I need to in case of emergencies, but like I can also just like, I can live there. So that's one thing.
Yeah. Yeah, just joking. Don't worry. Okay. Okay, next one from Rebecca. Okay, it's about this AIF. Okay, so I think something related to the math thing, right? So I think Coven already answered. Is that right?
Oh,
Will you read Chinese, Coven?
Oh, I can't. What does it say?
Okay, let me help. Okay, so okay, this is from Rebecca. It says she read about a Waterloo AIF screenshot. Okay, about have you ever taken any math competitions 1 year prior to the university, a year before? So they were asking why. Okay, let me try to read this. Okay. So for those kids who actually good with math, they will take competition 1 year early. So how should I answer those questions? Because the year will not match. Because they take competition 1 year ahead. Basically, I think that's a question. Then how can they submit their score for the competition? Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, okay. So Kevin touched on this earlier, like for like when he did the Euclid in grade 11, like you can do any competition like above your year level like at any time. So if you're like in grade 10, you could do the grade 12 math contest. So it doesn't matter. And if you're wondering like how can I compete? Well, the majority of the people doing the grade 12 math contest are grade 12 people, right? So it's not like geared towards you, and that's why like only the smart people who are like learning ahead and learning like grade 12 material like are gonna succeed, right, as a grade 11 student. So my advice is like if you're worried about like doing these math contests, like you don't have to do them ahead of time, but you could just try it, like because why not, right? So like it can't hurt you, so you could try it, but you don't have to worry about doing it before like the year that it's supposed to be for, right?
No, okay. Maybe I got the wrong translation for this. I mean, if Kevin can help as well. So basically, it's just asking. So the school, I mean, the university is asking before joining the school, 1 year ahead, 1 year before joining the university, have you taken any math competition? So that's my understanding of that question. So then she was puzzled, like if my kid took, let's say, took the examination or the competition like 2 years ahead, and then, oh, is it that make sense? Or anyone can help to make this question clearer? I need some help. Okay, the question is before joining university, 1 year before joining university, have you taken any? Oh, okay. Let's say the students is joining university in 2020. So Waterloo is asking before 1 year before 2020, which means between 2019 and 2020, have you taken any math competition? What if a kid already taken the competition in 2018 instead of 2019? How can they submit any score for that? So I think that's the question, right? Yeah.
Kevin, did you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't really matter. So like, if you're applying to Waterloo, and like Euclid is a Waterloo contest, so or like KLE is a Waterloo contest. I forgot the other ones, but basically, if you do let's say Euclid in grade 11, so you're applying the year after, right? Or you're applying the following year. Waterloo has a record of your test scores. So even if you don't do Euclid in grade 12, it doesn't matter. They'll just take a grade 11 score. So even if you don't do it in grade 12 and you do like previous contests, and it's fine. But for actually applying to university, Euclid is the one that matters. So like they'll see that if you did well in KLE, that's good, but Euclid is the one that matters because it's the one that's the most recent, like the one that's required for grade 12s. So yeah.
Yeah. So actually, Rebecca just added comment additional. So yeah, let's say the students already taken the competition 2018, but the form was asking for 2019.
What does she mean by like the form?
Yeah. The competition. The AIF form, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think the AIF specifies what time. I think the AIF just writes like if you have any like achievements or like scores from contests, let's say. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, Kelvin, got anything to add?
Oh yeah, so basically what Kevin's saying. So if you have a good Euclid score or whatever math contest score, right? All you have to do is go to the awards section in your AAF and just list it there and just list that you got it in 2018. So they won't care if you were in grade 12 or grade 11. Or
Okay.
she's saying
Okay. So yeah, Rebecca, I hope that helps. And we if in our community, if there's anyone really like from Waterloo University admission office, yeah, maybe that's someone who can help. We'll find out. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. How to apply for scholarship at Waterloo?
So every university has admission scholarships, which you are automatically eligible for, and that's based on your marks, right? So 95 plus, I believe, is 2,000. 90 plus is like 1,000. And yeah, and every university has the mark scholarships, so you don't have to worry about applying to those. Additionally, each program will have a certain amount of scholarships that they can give out to the best students. And those scholarships range from 4,000 to 16,000, and you don't have to apply for those as well. So those are just based on your marks and your AIF. And then there's some like scholarships that you actually have to apply for yourself. And I don't have any experience with those because I didn't do that. Yep.
Okay, next question. Okay, I think that's for Kevin. So what's the difference between Western medical science versus Queen's health science? Why do you choose Western? Yeah.
So Western, it's called Western medical science, but in theory, medical science is the same as Queen health science or like Mac health science. So the reason why it's called medical science is because Western also has a health science program, but the health science program is a bit different because medical science is basically like a pre-med route. So what that means is like you're studying chemistry, bio, also some physics, but you're basically studying to go into med school, right? That's like also the purpose of Queen's health science. But Western's health science, basically what it is, it's kind of like related to humanity. So it's like, how do you impact, or it's kind of like, how do you make an impact on the world in a health like circumstance? So that's a lot of times it's like related to like administration a lot of times. So it's not exactly a pre-med route to go into med schools, but people still take health science because it has easier courses. So it might be easier to get a higher mark, but it's not exactly the same courses that you're taking as Queen's health science. So that's like kind of the difference between, that's the kind of what's different between, that's kind of what's the same between like medical science and like the other health sciences at different schools. So their courses are actually like really similar. Okay. The reason why I chose Western medical science is because like this isn't very like, they basically medical science at Western, it's a 3rd and 4th year program. So it's called medical science in 1st and 2nd year. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to maintain your average so that when you get into 3rd year, you actually enter the medical science program. And in that program, they then like you're allowed to specialize into these different specialties, right? So that basically allows you to narrow down what you actually want to do later on. So it's kind of I think that was very cool. It allowed me to experience something more in specific, rather than just learning like everything in general, right? So I think that was very interesting. And there was also research opportunities, like you could run your own research lab, which I also found very appealing. So that's stuff that the school actually like gives you as an opportunity. And so I found that very, very nice. And also just Western's like atmosphere. The campus is also very nice. So these are just very small stuff, but they add up, and that's overall why I chose Western over like Queens, let's say.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes make a decision is hard. I mean, there's many things that you consider, and sometimes it's just like, just try it, right? Maybe there's no specific reason either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me, the Western. Okay, next question is, what categorized as early? I think that's that's for Kevin or for Coen?
Well, I mean, we can both kind of answer that.
For sure.
I think what early just means is, well, it means like obviously like not last minute, right? So this year, I think every year, I'm not too sure, but this year the deadline for application is January 15, I think, if I remember properly. So it's January 15. I applied to schools in November. So I already paid in November, and I started writing my sub apps in like end of November, December-ish. And then I finished them by like before January, like actually before we got into January. Um, so early, just make sure that early can mean like a lot of different things for different people, but as long as you can manage it well and that you feel like you're very satisfied with the final result, then it works out in the end. Um, so yeah, I think, for example, for Mac, HealthSci for the sub apps, they come out like they're supposed to come out in like October. So actually, when they came out, I already took a look at it and I already started planning how I would approach them. So you can consider that early.
Yeah, so I guess my take would be if you want to prepare early, what I suggest you do is just like make a Google Doc or something of all your achievements or of everything you know you're going to put on your AAF, and then just over time just keep building up that document so that you have one place that you can reference, so that eventually when you do need to submit these forms, you already have a base, right? And the other strategy I used was the AIF was due February 28th for Waterloo. And what I did was I waited until the first semester finals to finish, which was like in the middle, I think like at the beginning of February. So I was studying a lot for the finals, right? So I didn't have any time to write the AIF. So I finished that. And then you know how the start of a new semester is like very, very easy, like very chill, right? So at that time, between the start of February and the due date, February 28th, I basically, that's all I did, the AIF, just like making sure it was like the best it could possibly be, right? So just see like if you have like a timeline of what you need to do, just make sure you plan accordingly.
Okay. Yeah, early. Okay. Next one. Okay. Thank you, Colvin, for the presentation. Okay. This is okay. How did you realize that you really want to go to engineering, and what's the personal insights on the mechatronic engineering as a potential career option?
Okay, so I realized I wanted to go into engineering because I kind of thought I did have like the math and science background for it, but also engineering is a lot about problem solving, right? So if you like to solve problems, then you'll like it in engineering. And yeah, and the thing it comes down to is after you decide that you think engineering is the right fit for you, uh, the reason why I chose mechatronics is because I like the mechanical aspect, which is like the hands-on like materials and like being able to build something. The thing is, I think if you go fully down that route, there weren't that many career options. So I decided that I also wanted the software aspect in it, which is what mechatronics offers. So I found that as a much better career option as opposed to just solely mechanical. But I also think in terms of career options, I think software is like probably your biggest like sector for career growth, right? So that's why I wanted to incorporate software into my degree somehow.
Okay. Yeah, I think based on your explanation, I think it's kind of like a program like hybriding with different aspects of engineering, yeah, computer science. Yeah, I think that can be exciting. Okay. Okay, so next question is for Kevin. Okay, that's a very broad question. I think someone is really listening very carefully to what Colvin has mentioned earlier, reaching out to your upper grade, your seniors in your school. Okay, can you give any advice for White Oaks IB students?
Yeah. For IB, it might seem very daunting, especially like when you're first going into it. But it's not actually that bad. Like for me, it felt like I took like some hard courses. Like I took like HL Math and HL Chem. Some people might think like it's very, very difficult. Like obviously it is. But when you're actually in the class and you're learning it, you kind of just learn it as like as if it was any other class. So like if you stay on top of things, like it's not going to be as hard as you think. So the only thing with IB is that it challenges your time management a lot because on top of classes, like the difficulty of classes, they also give you a lot of like projects that you have to do. You also have to do like complete like volunteering hours, activity hours. There's a lot of different requirements to complete the IB program. So that's one challenging part of it, is to manage how to balance everything. But generally first year that's the time that a lot of people spend to get used to it. And when second year comes around, everyone's pretty much used to how IB works, and that's when people pick up like the pace and they start to do a lot better. So yeah, like the main part about like the main challenging part I think of IB is just time management. Like they just throw a lot of stuff at you. Like most of the time they throw stuff at you like together. Like all the teachers somehow plan out to have exams on the same week, right? So you just have to find out how to manage that. Other than that, I don't think like the courses itself, like because as you're going along with it, like with like people with their classmates, let's say, it's not actually that challenging because you guys are learning it together. So if you find ways to enjoy it, then that would be like the best. Like if you can find ways to enjoy IB, then you won't regret it in the end.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And let's move on. I think that's the last question for Kevin. Okay. Yeah. For the students in Western medical program, what's the percentage of students can get into medical school?
I don't remember. I remember searching this like when I was first applying to schools. I don't remember off the top of my head what the exact number is. But it's probably around like, I think like in the maybe like 20%, like 16-ish%. Like it doesn't seem like that big of a number because there are a lot of people in medical science. Like every year probably has like 800, 900 students for like med sci program. So it's a lot of people, and to get into med school is very hard, especially in Canada, because Canada, there's not a lot of like what's it called? There's not a lot of med schools first of all in Canada, but they also have very like limited spots. So, and you have to take in that there's also other applicants from other schools that are applying. But I think Western prepares you well. But in the end, it depends on how well you do it and how well like you perform on like tests and exams, and how much you do well in school, and also how motivated you are to like actually do well. So yeah, so there's a lot of statistics online, so you can take a look at that, right? Like there's a lot of statistics online, graphs, all of that. But you have to keep in mind that like if you feel very motivated and you actually want to do well and you actually want to go to med school, then you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. And next one. Okay, from Gordon. This is a question for Kevin again. If I plan to join grade 10 ALP next year, would I fall behind since I will miss the grade 9 ALP this year?
No. So ALP is kind of like, it doesn't really mean anything until you get into IB. So I think it stands for like advanced learning placement. I forgot what it's called, but ALP basically, it just means that as long as you're in the ALP track, you're like on track to go into IB, right? But you're basically studying like any other grade 9 or any other grade 10. So you missing grade 9 won't actually it's not going to do anything for you. Or like it's not going to do anything bad for you, right? So you won't fall behind. So just don't worry about that.
Okay. Next question from Patrick. My French is not very good, so if I want to apply for IB in grade 8, should I still apply for it?
What do you mean like apply to IB in grade 8? And it's fine if your French is not good. So I did HL French, which is like the higher level one, but there's a standard level French, right? So that one is like pretty standard. That's like your typical French class. So I'm not too sure what you mean by if you want to apply to it in grade 8. You can going into grade 9, you can apply to ALP, right? So if you do that, or at least for White Oaks, if you want to apply to ALP, you can do that, right? It's fine if your French is not good. Like I have a lot of my friends are actually like not that good at French. right? But they still pass IB in the end, right? By like doing well in other courses. Just make sure you don't fail French, but like it shouldn't be that big of a problem. I don't think so. So yeah.
Okay, I think that's the last question we have in the group chat. Okay, so let me just ask our audience one more time. Do you have any other questions? So you're still typing? Okay, so if not, I'll just say thank you to Kevin and Coen, who has been really preparing. I think this is the first time I feel like um, your presentation become like a technical report in terms of like in a stock market you have like those technical analysis, right? And this is really going to the details, like how you can making comparisons and what they're looking at and the process of making that happen. Yeah, thank you so much for all your excellent work and preparation, and thank you for this time. Okay, so I hope our audience enjoying this conversation presentation as well, and thank you all as well for sharing your questions, because this helped others as well. So basically we're learning all this together. Many of things are actually very new to me as well, so I'm learning as well. Thank you so much for your questions, our audience. Okay, so that will be the end of the our webinar for today. I hope everybody have a great evening, and also on the screen you see our programs. If you're interested in anything, just let us know and contact us, reach out to us. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for Jen, thank you Tina, thank you Katie, thank you Sophia, and thank you Kevin and Coven as well. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Bye.
All right.
Right. Um, I still have a piece of advice for anyone who's still here. So
Okay, go ahead.
if you're going into grade 12, the one thing like you don't want to regret doing is not trying hard enough. So like my advice for you if you're going into grade 12 is try as hard as you can, because if you try as hard as you can and you don't get into the program that you want to get into, then at least you could say you tried, right? But if you didn't try, then you'll probably regret it for the rest of your life. So just make sure that in grade 12, you try as hard as you can so that you don't regret it for the rest of your life, basically.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very good advice. Yeah, I mean, it's not just applicable for university. I mean, basically for life as well. That's advice for life. Many things many decisions we make. It could be university, it could be your job, it could be just your next job, or maybe a family. So we are making a lot of decisions. As long as we are doing our best, trying all we can, and there's nothing to regret, right? Yes. Thank you so much for the sharing. Again, thank you, Kelvin. Okay. Okay. Have a great night. Bye.